Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Animel. I'm Mel, the host of this channel, and thank you for joining me again today for another episode. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome! And you know what? This may be a wonderful episode for you if this is the first time you've been on my channel. So today we're going to be talking about Spring 2023 anime. Spring is right around the corner, and we've got some new anime slated, and I'm not going to waste any more time with this intro, so let's dive straight into it. I'm not going to waste time with this first one, as most of you who watch anime are probably up to date on this anime. Also, if you're new to anime, this actually might be a really good first anime for you. So we're back with Demon Slayer, and let's address the elephant in the room real quick. If you went to go watch Demon Slayer, the movie recently in theaters, that's kind of, is it still in theaters? I don't know if it's still in theaters. But nonetheless, if you went to go watch it, I just want to say I'm sorry that you got duped, bamboozled, and fooled by the promotion. So for those of you who went to go watch, you know that it's a recap of the last two episodes of the Entertainment District, or the Yukakuhen arc. And for those of you who haven't, congratulations, you saved yourself about $20. When I first saw the announcement for the Demon Slayer movie, I was really excited and I thought, oh, this is awesome. Let me go book my ticket. I want to go watch it. But then I remembered what happened with Mugen Train and how they released Mugen Train in theaters, but then they released Mugen Train on television. And the only differences are that when you watch it in theaters versus when you watch it in television, it's up to the production studio to edit it properly for cinema screen or theatrical screen versus television screen, and the way that the scenes are portrayed can look a little bit more extended on television versus in the movies, but you're not really missing anything, and the color grading also changes. So that's kind of what you paid for if you did go watch the movie, because the only new content that you got was roughly 20 to 30 minutes at max, and it is the first episode of the new arc, which is the Swordsmith Village arc. That is the arc that we'll be getting coming this April. So this April we'll be getting third season of Demon Slayer, in which we'll be introduced, or not really introduced, but dive in more to the Mist Hashira and the Love Hashira. Again, won't spend too much time on this. I'm really excited to see the Love Hashira because her katana is like really different and it looks super OP from the promotion videos and the teasers, and from word on the street as a non-manga reader is that the Swordsmith Village is quite possibly one of the coolest arcs within the Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba series. But even more so, I'm really excited to see the swordsmith makers behind their masks, because word on the street is you also get to finally see their faces. So we have a really hype, exciting arc coming up this spring, possibly one of the best arcs. So if you are a Demon Slayer fan, make sure that you add it to your calendar to start watching this spring season. And if you're not a Demon Slayer fan or you're new to anime, I highly suggest you add it to your list this spring season. Next on the list of some additional returning animes is Dr. Stone New World. So Dr. Stone, if you haven't seen it before, is essentially about this super duper IQ intelligent guy that gets petrified along with the rest of the world. So they're stuck as stone for like a couple hundred, if not thousands of years, until one day our main character Senku becomes unpetrified. I think I actually may have talked about Dr. Stone in another episode, perhaps even last spring. So I'm not going to dive into it way too much, but we fast forward about 1 or 2 seasons plus an OVA episode that was released from last year called Ryusui. So if you haven't seen that yet, watch that because it's a good pretext to Dr. Stone New World. So Dr. Stone New World, it's starting to feel a little bit like One Piece as a One Piece fan. So Senku has now kind of explored the land that he's on, I guess what used to be Japan, to understand how the world got petrified, and he really doesn't have any indication as to how or why it happened. But in looking for clues or to understand whether Japan was the only place that was petrified or the rest of the world was, he decides to leave, what's known as Japan and sail. So one, it feels like One Piece in that aspect because we've got kind of like a whole crew of people plus a known sailor or former sailor from centuries ago helping them, and also now it's like a mysterious treasure that they're looking for. If you've watched Dr. Stone and also watched One Piece, I'm starting to get some like Nico Robin vibes with the archaeology and trying to learn and discover the mystery of the petrification, plus they're looking for a treasure. It's just got like a lot of One Piece vibes going on. So I don't know necessarily how much I'm really invested in this new season, but I feel like since I'm curious to know as to why the petrification even happened in the first place, Dr. Stone still got my attention in the meantime. Also, quick note while watching the trailer, it looks like everyone gets petrified all over again, which is making Dr. Stone more confusing and a little bit harder to stay invested in. But I stay invested, again, one, because of the mystery, and two, there's some science in it, and it's kind of fun. I like science. So if you like science, Dr. Stone may be for you. If you're looking for something new to add to your anime list as you have your returning anime locked down and packed for this spring, this one may already be on your list, but if it isn't, you should add it to your list considering that MAPPA is animating it. And as you may know or not know, MAPPA is really famous in the industry, especially right now, considering that they've animated some really popular anime like Jujutsu Kaisen, Attack on Titan's latest season, and Chainsaw Man, which is literally taking the hearts of everyone. Well, maybe not literally, but it's taking everyone's hearts. And this new anime essentially is called Hell's Paradise, or otherwise known as Jigo Kyoraku. And while I want to say that what this anime is about is kind of straightforward, it doesn't feel that way. So the synopsis for this is kind of that our main character, Gabimaru, is like on death row. He's a ninja, in short, and he has committed tons of crimes. And even though he's committed all these crimes, he's not able to die. He has like superhuman abilities due to like the love that he has for his wife. It's really confusing. I don't really get all the connections because one, I haven't read the manga, and two, the synopsis of the storyline is kind of like very out there. But from what I've heard, this is an extremely popular manga, so people in the manga community have been hyping up its animation for this coming spring. But overall, Gabimaru, being that he's superhuman and really hard to kill, the shogunate has kind of decided that if we can't kill you, maybe we can absolve you of your crimes if you help us redeem this elixir of immortality from another realm. And this other realm has been, I guess, really hard to come back alive from. They've sent 5 different expedition crews and none of them have returned. So it's kind of like a journey into another realm in which he has to find this elixir in order to absolve himself of all these crimes. But along the way, he meets like different demons and other people that he's going to have to fight and encounter. So it's kind of like a huge battle royale sort of situation. I think like a ton of other people are after this elixir of immortality, and it's just going to be really action-packed from what we can see from the teasers and the trailers. And there's a lot of gore, which I feel like MAPPA is starting to excel at. So one of my favorite comedic discoveries that I've discovered in the past 1 or 2 years, that's also an isekai, so big alert to isekai fans. If you love an isekai, this one is for you, and you probably have already watched it, and it's called Konosuba. But this Konosuba is a spin-off from the one that you may have already seen. So the original Konosuba, which is called Konosuba, A Blessing on This Wonderful World, is getting spin-off to Konosuba, An Explosion on This Wonderful World. And if you've seen Konosuba, A Blessing on This Wonderful World, you'll know that explosion is synonymous with our lovely character, Megumin. So Megumin is getting her own spin-off show. There's also a manga if you want to read it. And we get to discover the origins of Megumin and how she becomes a explosion wizard. And we all know that Megumin is useless in our main storyline of Konosuba, A Blessing on a Wonderful World, due to the fact that she can only do 1 explosion a day, and then afterwards her body is rendered useless. So this is going to be another fun anime to kind of just have on your list to just keep your spirits up and keep you laughing, especially if you're having any blue days. I kind of feel like I should have started with this one, but here we go. We're squishing it right in the middle because I started reading this manga at some point earlier this year, or actually last year, around late last year, because one, I learned that the mangaka for Kaguya-sama was no longer going to do like manga drawings anymore after he finished Kaguya-sama, but was working on another anime as a story writer, not an illustrator. And this manga was called Oshi no Ko. And from what I read from the synopsis, it seemed like a romance, kinda, because the way the synopsis kind of goes, it's like this doctor, this OBGYN guy, you know, he's got this idol that he's a huge fan of, and one day he gets to meet her, and in meeting her, they foster this relationship, you know? So I was like, oh, you know, this is a little weird. Is it one of those like age gap romances? Like, I kind of want to see what this is about, and I'm kind of itching for a new romance manga or anime, so let's read it. Let me just tell you, from like the trailers and from like the synopsis, they're both equally deceiving. And I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but it is definitely about the bond between this OBGYN and his favorite idol of all time, but in a very different sense. Additionally, there's a lot of mystery involved here. So if you like mysteries, Oshi no Ko is quite possibly one of the most intriguing mysteries that I've read so far. Even though there are plenty of other mysteries in the anime manga community, this one is just really fun and intriguing because it's also got this depth of darkness to it, like the dark side to like the entertainment business. So it's got like a couple of complexities along with mystery going on that makes it really intriguing and has me coming back to it every week to read it. And from what I heard, Japan is getting a 1.5-hour premiere for the first episode. I don't know if we're getting the same thing once that's officially released stateside, United States side, or internationally, but I am super stoked to see it, and the animation of it looks really cool and really awesome. I guarantee that you're gonna love it. You have to add it to your list. It's probably gonna be a surprising favorite once you start watching it. The last new anime that I've got on my list, let me emphasize on that, is Mashle. So Mashle, I don't really know how I feel about it. I see a lot of hype around it, and it looks really funny, which has kind of like pulled me into why I want to watch it and why it's on my list for this video. But I wonder how far it will go, only because there's very limited visual context and previews and trailers on it. All I really know though is that Mashle is like a unmagical person in a magical world. And a lot of people have kind of portrayed Mashle as One Punch Man mixed with magic, which sounds really interesting and comedic, and I think I like the uniqueness. That's why it's kind of on this list. But I'm very curious as to how this goes, because the whole trailers and teasers and promos about it is about, one, how super strong Mashle is and how much he likes to work out, and two, he's really into cream puffs. Cream puffs seems to be like another item that he's fixated on aside from like weights and working out. And the story seems to go that Mashle, who's non-magical, is not currently attending, I guess, the magical academy that everyone is supposed to go to at some point in their lives. But since someone tried to assassinate his adopted grandfather, whom he just wants to live in peace with and have cream puffs with, he decides that he must attend this academy in order for him to become, I guess, the top student of this school, which must have some prestige or come with something that will allow him to protect his family or to protect, you know, the peace that he wants in his life. So he intends to go to the school and prove to them that you don't need magic to be the top student. So I'm really curious in general as to how this story pans out, and you know, why it's so popular and why it's gone on for 100+ chapters, because it sounds very weird from just the synopsis and the trailers. But it looks fun. Now, last on my list, actually last on my list, because this is a return, and I don't know whether this is like part 2 to season 1 or season 2, because you never really know with these things. Mobile Gundam Suit or Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch of Mercury is coming back. And if you started watching part 1 or season 1, it really started off very slice of life, which is very different from Gundam's formula. Gundam's formula is very like robots, war, and children who fight in war. Like that's Gundam's MO, okay? And when it first started out that way, I was like, ooh, this is really refreshing. It feels very light and airy. It's not as serious. It's about kids going to school and learning to become either Gundam pilots or Gundam engineers. It felt very different, and different for other reasons, because this is the first time that the Gundam franchise has had a female protagonist, okay? So Suletta, our female protagonist, she's very different in the sense where she's strong when the moments count, but she's also extremely timid, and a little soft-spoken or awkwardly spoken, I should better say. And she didn't have a very traditional upbringing compared to other spaced kids, because she lives on Mercury, Mercurin, they like to call them, but you know, the people who live in space are called Spatians. Anyway, I'm diving too deep into technicalities, but as the story goes on, and some concerns that people had for a few episodes when it first started out was that where was the storyline going? It felt like the same redundant slice of life, and what was making this Gundam, and how were we progressing with the storyline, and where was the conflict? Well, the conflict eventually presented itself, and it presented itself in the possibility of oncoming war that we may be looking at in part 2 or season 2 of The Witch of Mercury. And it also has started to raise a lot of questions, one being that Suletta's mom, who seems to maybe not be her actual mom, because there's some age discrepancy between episode 0 and how old Suletta as a child was at the time, then the time skip, then Suletta's actual age. There's a lot of talk about how Suletta should actually be in her 20s, but she's actually only 16 or 17 in the storyline, so there's speculation that she's a clone. That's number 1. And then number 2 is that the relationship between her and mom is very weird. Every time that her and her mom kind of have a conversation or they connect, at some point in the show, Suletta expresses some timidness, some fear, and some anxiety, in which her mom will go on to say something, I guess, comforting enough that almost triggers Suletta to act in a very different behavior, like almost like changing behavior overnight. These effects that Suletta's mom, Lady Prospera, has on Suletta start to take negative turns. At first, it was kind of positive, where she's overcoming her fears, but then there's kind of like this very blurred line about protecting people, and it's either be killed or your friends be killed or kill. And you kind of see this different side of Suletta, where she's happy that she's saved her friend in the very final scenes, but in actuality, she's just committed murder, and she's like smiling, which is very twisted, all because she feels like she's committed some glorious act, when in actuality, murder is murder, no matter in what context it's in. So it starts to dive into this gray moral aspect space, and then it starts to impede on the ideas that war is coming in the very traditional Gundam sense. So Gundam came back in full force in the last 2 to 3 episodes of The Witch of Mercury. So we have a lot of more Gundam elements, traditional Gundam elements to look forward to in season 2 if you're a longtime Gundam fan. And I'm interested in how they either bring back that slice of life concept or airiness that they had in the beginning of season 1, or if it'll even be back at all. Maybe it's just going to be straight Gundam darkness from here on out. So I may not have named everything that's coming out this spring. There's probably some other ones on your list that I haven't named. I'd love to know what other anime you're watching this spring that maybe I should add to my list. But for the most part, these 7 anime are definitely on my list, both returning and new, that I will be watching this spring. Let's see how much I love them, don't love them. I keep around for the future if, you know, they get animated for the foreseeable future. You never really know in the anime space sometimes. But that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in as always. I appreciate all of your support and all that you do for my channel and for me. But that's going to be all. I'll catch you all next time. I'm Mel, the host of this channel, and I am your guide to the vast universe of anime and manga. Bye!